So, this is World Religions. For those of you that don't know me, Dr. Todd Brenneman, Assistant Professor of Christian History and the Department Chair of Undergraduate Bible here at Faulkner. This is now my third year here at Faulkner. This is probably my, I don't even know. I've taught world religions quite a bit. When I was a graduate student at Florida State, which unfortunately seems like so long ago now, but then for 3 years at University of Central Florida, I taught 2 or 3 sections of world religions every semester, and including the summer. So even though I said my title is Professor of Christian History, I've taught world religions a lot. This is the second time I've taught it here at Faulkner. And I think there's a lot of interesting things about world religions, and hopefully hopefully you'll find that as well as we go through. But in thinking about taking a class called World Religions, what do you expect when you sign up for a course called World Religions? What do you expect coming into it? What we're going to be covering, other than world religions? Okay, granted. Yes. What does that mean?
The different surrounding cultures of where those religions are prominent.
Okay, so the surrounding cultures of where religions are prominent. What else?
Maybe not just what they believe about their gods, but what they believe about ours.
Okay, so they're kind of their own internal beliefs, but also what they believe about other religious groups, and especially, of course, Christianity.
History of beliefs, practices, like everything that makes up their belief system.
Okay.
Any belief system that we're talking about.
Okay, so not the kind of the broad view, the historical view, and as well as that kind of wide view of whether they believe, practice, teach, but also how has that changed and developed over time. Any other thoughts about
The impact of that religion on the world.
Okay, so the impact of the religion on the world. Yeah, that pretty much hits most of it. And so essentially, we're going to be looking at, boil it down to a couple of things. First of all, of course, we're going to look at these religions as much as possible within themselves. What do they believe? What do they practice? What are some very important writings for them? Who are some very important people? But also putting that in the context of a history. Because one of the things we recognize about certain aspects of human life, we often more when it comes to religion, and that's life continually changes. We recognize that, of course, within the past decade or so, how quickly our world changes, new technologies, ways we interact with people. And so we recognize that in the short term, but we think of often religions as being static things. And while I'm part of a religious group, Churches of Christ, that talks about the restoration of New Testament Christianity, wants to go back to the first century. As a historian, I also say first century Christianity is quite different, even among the Churches of Christ, let alone when we broaden that view. And so we have to kind of take into account with these other religions that there is this change in development that takes place. The other thing, which we already kind of mentioned to pay attention to, is this interaction between culture and society. Religion is not a separate part of human culture. Now, certainly as a Christian, I believe that there are some timeless truths that God has revealed through Scripture that are independent of human culture, that are independent of human history. But in many respects, the practice of religion as a thing or as a religion as a phenomena performed within life, is shaped by culture. It's shaped by how we think about a variety of other aspects, and it often shapes those as well. How we think about who we are in this world, is shaped by our religious beliefs. How we think about the roles of men and women, what kind of jobs are acceptable, what aren't acceptable, politics. Right? Religion is intertwined with all of those things, and so it's important to kind of see those connections. But then also, of course, in the context of a Christian university, we want to think about, what are some opportunities for Christians to preach the gospel to others, as well as just in general engage in interfaith dialogue. Right? While I certainly, as a Christian, would love to see the world converted for Christ, I'm not naive. But still, even those people that are committed to these religious beliefs, there are opportunities for us as Christians to engage them in conversation, to work with them in trying to make our world a better society. And so where are those places where we can find enough agreement to work with, as well as opportunities to share the gospel? Where are the places where we can have some commonality with other religions? Where are some places that there's going to be some difficulty because of how they view God, how they view the notion of Scripture? And so we're going to talk about those things as well. And all of that is reflected in the course objectives at the beginning of the syllabus. At the end, I'm not going to read through the syllabus. The syllabus is available on Blackboard. I hope you spend some time with it. But I'm going to try to hit the highlights of that. But essentially, with the objectives, here are the kind of things that I expect you to be able to know, to do, and hopefully to value by the end of this course. I'm going to start this course. We are a little bit over 10 minutes into it. And tell you up front, this is a difficult course. That's not necessarily me trying to tell you that I'm a tough teacher. If you've had me before, maybe you think I am. But I'm not intentionally trying to make world religions tough. It's a difficult subject. And here's why. I've heard it compared to studying a language. That in studying a religion, you have an entirely new vocabulary you have to learn. Now, there are some traditions that Christianity, if you grew up in a Christian tradition, or maybe if you grew up in a different religion, there's some places where you'll have some common vocabulary. But there will be other places where the vocabulary is different. And so, in learning a religion, you have to learn an entirely new vocabulary. And thinking about that vocabulary in the context of learning a language, there's a lot of grammatical rules you need to learn as well. Right? How do these concepts fit together for someone who is Hindu, someone who is Muslim, someone who is Jewish? And so it's difficult because it's not just learning Spanish. We're learning Spanish and French and Latin and Greek and all sorts of other things. It's also difficult, especially when we talk about some Eastern religions, because Hinduism and Buddhism use some similar concepts, but in terms that they mean some different things. We'll encounter this about midway through the semester. Within Hinduism, there is the concept of dharma. Dharma for Hindus refers to one's religious duties. What are the expectations that you have as a Hindu of the kind of things you'll do? Whether that's as a male householder, whether that's as an older grandparent, right? Men, women, all have different dharma, all have different obligations. Buddhists also talk about dharma. But dharma for Buddhists, spelled the same in English and in Sanskrit, refers to the Buddha's teaching. And so in one case it's duty or obligation, and in another case it's teaching, but it's the same word. And so it's a challenge that you face. I don't want to say, come here on Tuesday and there's like 3 of you left. It's worth it because there is a lot of important things that we need to see because we live in a very rapidly changing world, and even in the United States, although it's been very diverse throughout its history, it's getting more and more diverse. Yes, there have been some representatives of religions outside Judaism and Christianity from the very beginning. There were Muslims present in the United States during the colonial period. There have been people from Asia bringing with them Confucianism and Buddhism in the 19th century, right? So a lot of these groups have been present in the history of the United States, but much more so in more recent years with a lot of immigration. And so we're needing to have an awareness of our neighbors and who they are and what they believe so we can interact with them. So I'm not saying this to discourage you, but I'm saying this to say, strap in, right? We're going to be trying to go through all these religions that we could individually take a semester on Hinduism, Islam, or some of those other things. So as you can kind of see, you're going to be able to, hopefully, right, a successful student will be able to talk about who are the important people, what are the important texts, the concepts, the practices, all of the kind of things we mentioned earlier. But then also thinking about some of those larger issues, how religion and society interact. And so the last several classes, we'll be looking at the intersection of religion and popular culture, the intersection of religion and globalization, as well as where does religion, right, that broad term religion, not just Christianity, religion stand in the world in the 21st century. Especially, of course, thinking about Christianity. What's the role of religion? What kind of impact does religion have? I mean, a lot of people today are talking about the decrease in religion. Pew Forum just released a study a couple of months ago saying the United States is becoming less Christian. And so they talk about the decrease of people identifying as adherents of Christianity. Well, some people look at that and say religion broadly is on decline in the world. Yet, all you have to do is listen to NPR, get on CNN, watch Fox News. Do we find stories about religion and the impact religion's making? Yeah. Right? Maybe not as much here in the United States as it might have been in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, but it's still making an impact here and around the world. And so, religion today still has those kind of impacts. And then also, being able to talk about where do Christians agree with some of these other groups, where do they disagree, what are the opportunities for interreligious dialogue, and then finally demonstrating critical reading, thinking, writing skills. Now, I'd love for me to be able to just trust you and at the end of the semester say, can you do these things? And you say yes. And I say, fine, here's an A. All right? It would work wonderfully, wouldn't it? Not going to happen. It's not because I don't trust you, but I have some things to answer to as a professor. So, there are going to be ways that we check to find out, can you do these things? Do you know these things? And that's going to happen in a couple of different ways. Essentially, it's going to happen through reading quizzes, exams, and reflective essays. All of these are meant to help you demonstrate to me that you know those people in text, that you can talk about religion and how it relates, and that you can talk about where are some places of agreement, where are some places of disagreement. We'll say more about these here in a little bit, give you some idea of what to expect for that. We'll be using 3 textbooks in this class. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to get them already. If not, you definitely want to get them as soon as possible. All of these are available through the Blackboard store. Log into Blackboard. Right in the middle is Blackboard store. You click on it. It'll have all your classes, all your textbooks already loaded for you. There are options to buy used textbooks. All of these are also available on in electronic format. If you want to use your iPad or a Kindle or something else like that. But you want to get them as soon as possible. And in the marketplace, in the Blackboard store, you can find some pretty reasonable prices used as well. But I tried to find books that wouldn't be too expensive, but that would still be useful. One of the major books that will really be helpful in this course is Winfred Corduron's Neighboring Faiths. It's not a very aesthetically pleasing book, right? There's no color pictures. That's why it's only like 20-something, 30-something bucks versus some of the world religions textbooks out there, which are $90, $100, some of those kind of things, right? So I said, this one, right? It does a very good job covering a lot of those things. Key people, text, history, the practices, But the other really good thing about Quarteron is that he has a section at the end of all the chapters about, right? So you meet a Jain, so you meet a Sikh, so you meet a Jew. What are some places, right? So helping us with that interreligious dialogue. So this one you definitely want to get as soon as possible. Coming from a Christian perspective, an evangelical Christian perspective. On the other hand, you have Stephen Prothero, who is a very well-known religious studies scholar for his work on religion, but also because he's appeared on The Daily Show. He's been on Colbert before Colbert became the successor to David Letterman. So he's very out there in public, writes a lot for newspapers and those kind of things. So very public, but also a very good author when it comes to the issue of religious literacy, wanting people to know about different beliefs and practices. And so this book focuses on specifically 8 religions, the ones he calls in the subtitle the 8 religions that run the world. And so this will kind of be a complement to Quarteron. One of the things I really like about Prothero's book is that, first of all, he works against this assumption that a lot of people have that different religions are just all the same path to God. Now, he's doing it from a religious studies standpoint versus a specifically Christian standpoint. And what that does for him is allow them to say, while that narrative of they're all roads up the same mountain is meant to help us as a world work together, be kinder to each other, pluralism, all those kind of things, which that aspect is positive in the sense of, I'd like to see less religious conflict in the world. But on the other hand, what Prothero says is that religions, when you look at them, not only do they have different views of God or gods, they also have different goals. The goal that Christians have. If you had to say right now, what's the goal of Christianity? 1 word, 2 words. What's the goal of Christianity? Go to heaven. Right? We might say salvation too. That's not the goal of Hinduism. Within Hinduism, Buddhism, there really isn't that conception of heaven like what we have in Christianity. And the groups that do have views of heaven, right, the 3 major monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, each of them have slightly different views of what heaven is. Also, when you think about it, religions have different views about what's wrong with the world. Right? One of the things behind religion is there's something wrong with the world. In Christianity, what would you say is the major thing wrong with the world? Sin. And so a lot of the way Christians view the world and talk about the world is related to those concepts of sin and salvation. Some of those concepts don't fit in with other religions. As Prothero boils down for us, the major problem in the world in Islam is self-sufficiency. Is we think we can do it on our own, that we don't need anybody else. Especially in Islam, we don't need God. Right? That's the problem in the world. It's not exactly sin. That concept. We probably find agreement and say, yeah, it's sinful or it's against God. But they're talking about something different. Right? The solution to that problem is different among these religions. And so breaking it down into this, what's the main problem in the world according to this religion? What's the main solution? I think it's very helpful kind of to boil these groups down to give us a broad view. And then finally, the Christianity at the Religious Roundtable is conversations between evangelicalism, so kind of conservative Christianity, and Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. So also helping us out for where are these places of agreement, where are these places of disagreement. So the two, if you haven't gotten them yet, Prothero and Quarteron, you want to get as soon as possible. Tennant, if you can't get it right now, there is a little bit of time. One nice thing related to the books that you may not know. I know often a lot of students hold off getting their books till the financial aid comes in. Completely understand that, right? If you go to the business office, student accounts, and you're on financial aid, they can provide you a voucher online to the Blackboard store so that you can order your books, get that taken care of before your check comes in. And once your check comes in, they redisperse some of the things. So if you haven't had the chance to get it, go over to the student council, let them get that set up for you so you can go ahead and get your books, because that will be very important. I want to say some things about reading in this class. Because often coming to the kind of reading we're doing, we'd like to just kind of sit down, read straight through, and be done. But in order to really kind of get these concepts, boil them down, really integrate them in your thinking, as well as prepare for exams, quizzes, those kind of things, there are a couple things I would suggest you do. First of all is be prepared to go through it multiple times, and be prepared to go through it and take notes. Right? Now, whatever's going to work best for you, right? Having a separate notebook, if you get it electronically, of course, a lot of the readers, you can do highlights and notes all in them, underlining or all those kind of things. But be prepared to do that active type of reading. Don't just think, okay, I can just read this textbook, I'll be all right. Also, don't just go in it and thinking of, I'll just read the beginning and read the whole way through and I'll be done. It's also very helpful, especially in the Prothero book, especially in the Tenet book, break up your reading. Read the introduction, read the conclusion. That'll give you an idea of what's the direction of this particular chapter. Look through the sections. What are the different things that's going to be emphasized? Also, take the time to summarize. If you had to tell somebody what this section was about, what this chapter was about, those are the kind of things that will help you the best, that will help prepare you for coming to class and talking about it, coming to class asking questions, being prepared for exams. Especially important is paying attention to certain elements within the text. Now, it's going to vary from text to text, but a couple things to pay attention to. If it's in italics, if it's in bold, those are the kind of things, those are key words, key concepts. All right? Probably should get those down and know them. If there's a list, right, this is the Four Noble Truths. All right, okay, your Four Noble Truths, I'll get that. If something's defined, Quarteron especially has a section at the end with definitions, key terms. The other thing you want to do is pay attention to the key things to know list on Blackboard. I'll talk more about the key things to know list here in a minute. Those are the things that I want you to really pay attention to as you go through your reading. Right? And so, focus on those kind of things. They'll also help with the exams. All right, so let's talk about some of the requirements, assignments, those kind of things for the semester. One thing, of course, is showing up to class. This definitely is an important one because we're covering a lot of material in relatively a short amount of time. All right, and so, I'm not going to go over everything in the book, but I'm going to try to highlight some things, point out some things I really want you to pay attention to, bring in some things that aren't talked about that I think are important to know. But then there's also the opportunity for you to ask questions, if you're confused about something or you don't understand something, engaging in that. Hopefully we'll have some time to have some discussion. I know it's a little bit difficult, for us to do that with the online section because of the conversation. Sometimes it's difficult for the mic to pick up some of the students. But I'd like us to think about these things, talk about these, especially as we talk about interfaith dialogue, talking about evangelism. For the way I do attendance is based on you get a certain number of points every day you come to class. All right? And so instead of starting off and then docking you points, you get points for every time you show up to class. If you want, there are 2 classes that you can skip before it will impact your grade. All right? So you can still get that 100 out of 100 on attendance and miss 2 classes, no questions asked. All right? Toward the end of the semester, it's nice out, you'd rather not come to class right after chapel, right? That's fine. So those 2 are built in there, so use them judiciously. Right. The other thing with that is if you don't use those 2, those will be extra points added onto your final grade. So that's one way to help out your final grade. But come to class, prepared to talk. We're going to, yes, be doing a lot of lecture because I really have some things that we really need to focus on. But hopefully you'll be prepared enough that we can talk about some things, we can discuss some things, and it's not entirely lecture. Second element of the grade are the reading quizzes. Reading quizzes are available on Blackboard under quizzes, as you would expect. Slightly different on the Blackboard site for the online class. It says quizzes and exams, but it's essentially the same thing. I'm going to be showing here the face-to-face Blackboard. It should look similar to the for the online students. So quizzes. Nearly all the quizzes are available. There's one toward the end of the semester I haven't gotten up yet. Quizzes here give you the due date. Quizzes are due 1 hour before class begins. Right, so at 9:40 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Most classes will have a reading quiz with them. Also here on Blackboard tells you what the reading is for that quiz. So this first one is due Tuesday, and it's on essentially the first part of Quarter Run and the first part of the first chapter of Prophet. So these are all locked. Once you click on them, it's counting you as taking the exam or taking the quiz. So don't click on it until you're ready to take it. All right. But if you want to work ahead, especially if you know toward the end of the semester you're going to have a lot of things on your plate, activities, things are going to be busy, you got a research paper in that course, the opportunity to work ahead is available. Because it's Blackboard, everything always works perfectly on Blackboard. There are never any problems. In the highly unlikely event that something goes bad on Blackboard with your reading quiz, like it suddenly shuts down in the middle of your quiz, email me as soon as possible, right? If something technologically goes wrong, email me as soon as possible so we can get you fixed on your Blackboard quizzes. Each of the quizzes, 5 points, 5 questions, right? So one point per question. Multiple choice for most of them. There's one quiz that two quizzes where essentially you just have to write a couple sentences. And there's toward the end, they don't work well for multiple choice, so it's kind of like, what's the point of this chapter? What's the idea that you're trying to get across? So there's 2 quizzes like that, but most of the quizzes are multiple choice. Very helpful for you, hopefully. I'm hoping that it's helpful. Is the key things to know file. It goes through all the chapters, broken up by Tuesdays and Thursdays, and what I really want you to focus on. Really pay attention to these things in that chapter. And so, have that with you, near you, printed out, on your tablet, whatever, so that as you're reading you can highlight those things, right? Because the questions from the quizzes are going to be from these terms and ideas, general types of information, right? So, the question might be something like, what is the Quran? A, the Muslim scriptures. B, a pilgrimage every Muslim takes once in their life. C, and so as you're reading, all right, Quran. Oh, Quran is the Holy Scripture, right? It's the text, all right? So those kind of questions, all right? And so pay attention to those kind of things. So the 5 pillars. What are the 5 pillars of which of the following isn't one of the 5 pillars of Islam? Right? Now I prefer you to really focus on those kind of things so you're ready for the quizzes. And so that's why I've highlighted them there. There's a lot of other information that we'll talk about in the text that hopefully will be helpful, because as you're doing this, this will also help prepare you for the exams as well. I mean, there'll be additional material, but this will help prepare you for the exams. If you want a broader view of the reading quizzes and the assignments, the schedule gives you what should be done when, right? What other kind of things need to be done, what we'll be covering in each of those sections. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. All right, so 5 multiple choice questions based on the reading. You have 10 minutes to take it. If you're prepared, it shouldn't take you that long. But you have 10 minutes. Quizzes are due an hour before class starts. Because of the number of quizzes, I will drop the 3 lowest. Now, individually, even if you missed, let's say 5, it's still not going to impact that much of your grade. But what this means is, if you miss 3, or you do poorly on 3, or toward the end of the semester you've done all of them and you just decide, I'm not doing these last 3. All right, I get that. You know, that will you know, help you there. Usually there are no makeups. If you've missed the quiz, you've missed the quiz. However, technology problems, if there's you know, something else related to an activity or some other kind of thing, let me know. Let's talk about it. You know, I can you know, be willing to make some changes, but in general, it's a general policy. If you've missed it, you've missed it. But because you have 3, it won't have that profound of an impact. Talked about the key things to know thing already as well, but you know, hopefully that'll provide useful information for you. We'll also have 4 exams in the semester. That sounds like a lot, and here's my reasoning behind it. The reason is we're covering so much information that if I gave a midterm and final, it would be so much for you to know for one exam. By breaking it up into 4, we can focus just on Judaism and Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism, new religions, you know, some things like that. And so the reason behind that is that, you know, it provides material, a smaller amount of material for you. The tests will be, the final will be comprehensive, but before you freak out, let me tell you this. The last class will spend time, because there's only certain things comprehensively that I want you to know. All right? And so we'll spend that last class talking a little bit about religion in the 21st century, and then also reviewing. Here are the things that you need to know for that final. Right? So we'll try to pare it down. So, you know, okay, I don't need to know all these terms. I can just focus on these things. The exams will be a combination of multiple choice, short answer, and an essay. Essays for most of the exams will probably run like a 7 to 10 sentences long paragraph. Right? So we're not talking about pages and pages of essay. We're just talking about a long paragraph. Material will come from the textbooks, lecture material, our discussions in class. For each of the exams, I will provide you a study guide, at least 2, hopefully 3 weeks before the exam, so that you can really focus on what to study and not spend as much time on some things that while I think are important, it's not necessary for you to know for this exam. Questions about the exams or the reading quizzes? All right, the last, well, there are 2 more things related to grades. One are the reflective essays. There are 5 reflective essays on the schedule. You only need to complete 4 of them. And so you can pick which 4 you want to do. You know, if you want to skip the first one, that's fine. If you want to skip the last one, that's fine. If there's one in the middle you don't want to do, that's fine. You only have to do 4. Each of them should be 750 words. It's about 2 to 3 pages double-spaced. And what I'm looking for is you have 3 parts. Now that doesn't mean it's 250 words for each part, but essentially there are 3 parts that I want you to focus on. First, is a summary of what that reading is about. What's the main teaching? What's the idea that's being talked about in this reading? And then this middle section about, do you agree with this concept, disagree with this concept, why? And then finally, using the teachings and ideas in this text, where are some places for interreligious dialogue between Christians and views reflected in this text? Submitted electronically, you don't need to bring paper to class. That should say completion of all 5 essays earns you 20 points extra. Right? So again, if you want to so what I'll do is if you do all 5, I'll take the 4 best, but then also add 20 points on your final score. Right? So if you want to do all 5, that will provide you with some benefit. Let me again share the screen here. All of that information is under assignments. Gives you the reading length. Right? So the first one is on the Pittsburgh platform. We'll talk about each of these before you have to read them. In the sense of we'll talk about Reformed Judaism, which Pittsburgh platform is very important about. And so the reading is available at that link. It'll take you to a link through the library. If you're off campus, you may need to log in. Whatever you use to log into your email, your username and password. So that'll take you to that. And then it takes you right to the document text. There are options at the top where you can put it in PDF if you want to print it out or you want to download it. If you just want to read it. This one is smaller than some of the others. Some of the others are a little bit longer than this. But most of them aren't too bad as far as length. And so for the first essay, you'll read the Pittsburgh platform. And we'll talk in class about what the Pittsburgh platform is. Also hope to have time in class before this one is due for us to do a couple things, talk about it, and give you a better idea of what I'm looking for. So we'll say much more as we get closer to time. Like I said with the others, if you want to jump ahead before we get to those sections, that's fine. So they're available there for you to do ahead of time if you want to. But the dates there are the due dates for each of those reflective essays. Any questions about the reflective essays before we move on? For the reflective essays, the only reading that you'll need to do is what is in those links. You don't need to use any other outside sources, anything like that. If you would happen to quote something from one of the textbooks, just give me the last name and the page number, but you don't need any other outside sources. So we're not doing any sort of research paper for this course. There will be a video assignment about week 9. Week 9 is the Faulkner lectureship, and so there are lectures going on, Bible lectures going on in this building throughout the day, and so there are no Bible classes held that week. Not that week, but the first couple days. And so one of the things you'll be required to do is watch a Frontline documentary on the Mormons. Frontline with PBS, excellent documentary, does a good job covering Mormonism. Let me go back to this one a minute. That information is available already in Blackboard. The link to the documentary. You only need to watch the first part. It runs about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit over that. There are 2 parts. If you're interested, now feel free to watch the second part, but you only need to watch the first part. There are a couple questions that you need to answer related to that, and then submit those to me by March 6th at 5 p.m. This assignment will be graded on a done, not done basis. If you did it, you get the 50 points. If you don't do it, you don't get the points. But there are key things to know from the documentary that will appear on exam 3. So even, it's not just answering those questions, they're also, I wish I had the time to cover Mormonism, burgeoning world religion, but we don't with all the other materials and then spring break and losing some time for the lectures. I'll remind you as we get closer to that. Also during the lectures, there will be another opportunity for extra credit, and I'll say more about that as well. Here's the grading breakdown, how much each is worth. I always feel bad because several of you I've had for additional semesters, and so you've heard this spiel already. But for those of you that haven't, I always do my semesters out of 1,000 points because it just becomes addition and subtraction, as opposed to thinking, okay, these assignments are worth 20%, and so you gotta do all sorts of percentage types of things. This way you can always kind of keep track of where you are. All right, I've gotten this many points, I want to get to, I want to get to here, I want to get there, I want to get there. How can I do that with what's left in the semester? Those kind of things. But if you're ever unsure where you stand in the semester, by all means, drop by, catch me after class. We can talk about where you are and what you need to do. So, but hopefully that'll help out. The other reason of doing it out of 1,000 points is no one assignment, if you do badly on it, will sink you. If you do poorly on the first exam, for example, not that anybody's going to, but let's just say, all right, it's not going to kill the rest of the semester, right? Because it's just one small component of a larger piece. Now, if you miss all of the reading quizzes, you don't show up to class, things are going to start adding up. Right? But no one thing will entirely sink you for the semester. Questions about anything related to the grades or any of the assignments? All right, policies, we've already talked about attendance. Don't forget, keep in mind, if you do miss, you can miss up to 2 unexcused. It's not going to have an impact on your grade. You miss more than 7, however, you could end up with an FA. Again, I don't think that's going to be a problem, but just kind of keep that in mind because that 7 is excused and unexcused.
What about tardies?
I don't count tardies. Now, if you come in like at the very end, I'm not going to count that. But if you're 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, and so if you do come in like 5 minutes late, make sure to sign in before you leave, because if the attendance sheet has gotten past you and I don't see your name later, I might, we're a small class, I might catch, okay, yeah, he was here even though he didn't sign in. But just make sure to sign in before you leave just in case. Makeup work, probably, pretty much similar to what we talked about. You can make up an exam if you have excused absence. That could be athletic activity, you're working as an ambassador for the school someplace or whatever. The key thing is get in touch with me as soon as possible so we can make those arrangements. So again, with the reading quizzes, if something happens, get in touch with me. Text, don't be texting, chatting, whatever. I have no problems if you're using your iPad to take notes. I'm going to try and get the PowerPoint slides up on Blackboard before so that you can have more time to catch the notes, right? I mean, it's more than just a PowerPoint bullet point. So, if you're using that to kind of follow along, that's fine. But, a lot of other things can be distracting and can distract you, it can distract others, so please try to avoid that temptation. If you have a grading dispute, I don't really like that term dispute because it sounds like an antagonistic thing, but if after I've given you an assignment back or you've gotten an exam back and you've looked at the grade and you think that I've made a mistake, which is certainly a possibility, you have up to 3 days to come talk to me about it, and I'm more than willing to go over something again. I certainly have made mistakes in the past, not too many, regarding exam grades, but if I do, please get in contact with me. Please take advantage of that right to appeal. It's not going to be a vindictive thing over, well, okay, what can I find now to deduct these points? Right? So seriously, if you're concerned about your grade because you think you've done better, please get in contact with me about that. And certainly, if at any point you want to talk about how to improve your grade in this class, come talk to me about that. A couple things about academic honesty, things that you've already heard, I'm sure, other places, but I think academic integrity is a very important thing, and it's a reflection of character. And so I want to encourage integrity in you as students, not just learning world religion. So don't use any work as your own. So don't, like I said, for the reflective essays, you don't need to do anything other than read that text and think about it in your brain. You might be able to find something online that could work for that essay. I tried to structure these so that it's not the easiest to necessarily Google something, but use your work. Don't claim somebody else's work as your own. If you do happen to use a website, something other than the textbooks, make sure that it is properly cited in your assignment. If you have a question about how to cite, get in contact with me. We're from all sorts of different disciplines, so whatever discipline manual you're used to, MLA, APA, SBL, use whatever you're used to if you're doing citation. Like I said, you don't need to do that, but if you do, make sure to cite it properly. Don't use someone else to complete assignments if you haven't checked it with me. Let's just say, for example, the video assignment. If you're watching it together with somebody else, that's great. Do the questions on your own. Some of the other kind of things, you're not, an exam, obviously, you're not going to be working with anybody else during the exam. But I mean, there aren't too many opportunities for that, but just keep that in mind. Now for the do's. We talked about the do's. Do your best work. I want to encourage you to give your best effort in this class. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a great challenge. I know you have other courses, you've got other activities, you work, but do your best work. Help me. Let me know when I can help you do your best work. But I want to encourage you to do your best work. Follow the appropriate citation guides if necessary. Do whatever it takes to keep your integrity. And make sure that the work you're submitting is yours or is properly cited. I would rather you submit a 250-word essay that is entirely yours than a 750-word essay you got from somebody else. Now, the grade is not going to reflect it, but you can at least look me in the eye, stand before God, and say, I did my work. Now, maybe it wasn't the best I could do because I didn't have that time, but you've done your work. And so, whatever it takes to keep your integrity. If you need academic accommodations through Project Key, you probably already know about getting in contact with them so that they can let me know if you need a note taker, additional time on exams, other accommodations to make sure you succeed. So make sure to get with them as soon as possible so they can let me know and we can figure out what we need to do for you if that applies. Contacting me. I'm available in my office 8:30 to 9:45 Monday through Thursday for you to drop by. Questions about the reading, the quizzes, whatever. If you have a class during that time, I am available at other times. I'm in my office quite a bit, Monday through Friday. So even a Friday appointment. So just contact me. Let's work something out. If it's something that can be handled by email, that's fine. Shoot me an email. Try to respond within 24 hours. But if you haven't heard from me within 48, send it to me again. Catch me after class. My office phone number is on is on the syllabus, so you can always call me as well. I didn't put that on there. So whatever I can do to help you with that. What questions do you have? What do we need to clarify? All right, so we'll go ahead and end there today. Most days we'll be going to 12 o'clock, but try to catch up, try to do the readings for Tuesday. Our focus Tuesday and Thursday of next week is going to be on some general concepts about the study of religion, including defining religion. So think about over the weekend, if you had to define religion, how would you define religion? What makes something religious? And so we're going to talk about that, the study of religion, and talk about some terminology. What do terms like ritual, text, what do those terms mean, and how we're going to be using them in the semester? So we'll pick that up on Tuesday.